Hi, it's Brian King here. I'm an entrepreneur and business relationship coach, and I'm here to help executives and entrepreneurs transform the conversation between their ears and between themselves and their peers so that they can create more empowered and productive teams. So you ready to get started? Awesome. I'm very excited. Our guest today is on a mission to help business owners and entrepreneurs create meaningful connections through effective communication. So we're already starting on the same page. Her name is Felicia Slattery. She's a #1 best-selling author, an internationally acclaimed speaker, and the creator of the trademarked signature speech system. She says the worst way to start a new business relationship is for one person to spit out a memorized marketing message to another unsuspecting person who happened to ask, "So what do you do?" She works with experts, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and celebrities around the world to help them write and deliver speeches that work and communicate with people on a human level. So please join me in welcoming today's guest, Felicia Slattery.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Excited. I'm so glad we got through our technology glitches so that we could meet here.
I am
now,
too.
Go ahead.
That's all. I just want to say thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, let's give you a little context before we start talking to Felicia. The reason I asked her to join us today is because she just finished writing a book, and she's got the first official copy that she's going to show you. And that book is called Kill the Elevator Speech. Stop Selling, Start Connecting. So show us the book really quick, Felicia.
Here it is.
Beautiful.
Yay!
Now, that's another thing Felicia and I have in common, is a disdain for the elevator speech. So I'm really eager, Felicia, to get your take on this. So before we get started, let's define some terms here. When we say elevator speech, what are we talking about?
Okay, that's good. So the elevator speech is the thing that most people have heard at some point in their business careers, that you need to be able to define who you are when you go to a networking meeting or you go to an event and somebody says, "Oh, what do you do?" And the elevator speech then is supposed to be, depending on who you ask and what book you read and what expert you consult, it's anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes of a, the people call it an elevator pitch, of that thing that answers the question, who you are, what you do, who you do it for. And it's in some cases, people designed it to say, well, you want folks to say, "Oh, well, how do you do that?" or explain more, or whatever the case may be. But that's really what we're talking about, is that the answer to the question, what do you do? And what do you say, and how do you say that? People call that the elevator speech, and I say we should not be doing them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, just for myself, because you and I, I'm sure, travel in a lot of networking groups, is when someone gives an elevator pitch, it's almost like their personal representative came forth, and you're talking to somebody else.
Yeah, nobody's ever said it like that, but you're exactly right. It's almost like they went and said, "Oh, wait, let me get the sales department on the line for you," and the sales department showed up, and they, spit out their spiel. And it's like suddenly now you've gone from, shaking hands with somebody over the cheese table to, like, oh, I got transferred to another department. I didn't know. You're right, exactly.
It's like the director just said action, and they assume this role, and you're like, okay, where did you go? This is obviously rehearsed. Are you talking to me, or are you talking from your memory? You immediately lose connection. Now, as an author myself, I know that book ideas just don't come out of nowhere.
Right.
So there's got to be a story behind this one, right?
Oh, there is. So I've been a speech teacher forever. Every job I've ever had involved me standing in front of audiences, being a speaker myself. I've got a master's degree in communication. I've taught at University of Illinois Chicago and Elmhurst College. I've been a college professor of speaking, teaching, and communication for a lot of years. And so in my business, I do the same thing. And so I've had clients for more than a decade saying, "Felicia, could you please teach me how to write an elevator speech?" And I would always say over my dead body, I'm never going to do that. And I would explain to them why and why it was not a bad thing and give them some alternatives. And they would leave happy. And I was sitting in the audience at an event with author Michael Port. And for people who don't know Michael, he's a New York Times bestselling author. One of the books that he wrote is called Book Yourself Solid. And in Book Yourself Solid, Michael talks about the elevator speech. And he mentioned that day on stage. And I'll tell you the words that he said in just a second. It's not really too big of a surprise because they're the title of my book. But when he said them, I had like this hallelujah moment. It was like this chorus of angels sung in my head. And I said, oh my gosh, that's the title of my next book. And he said, you know, we should just kill the elevator speech. We should never do it again. We just shouldn't be doing it. And I was like, hallelujah, somebody is speaking my word. And in that moment, I knew that I had to write this book. Michael does talk, he has that chapter in his book, and he's been talking about it for a while, and I've been talking about it for a long time to my clients, and I've mentioned it in different places. But it's high time for a full book to talk about why this thing just does not work and what people can be doing instead. And so actually Michael did write the foreword to the book, which I'm super excited about. And so that's where the idea for the book came from. And in fact, I'm not sure how you published your book, but I was in touch with a traditional publisher, and I kind of went around the way the typical process is. I didn't even realize it, but they had sent me a note and said, hey, one of your colleagues suggested that you might be interested and willing in reading and potentially endorsing their book. And I said, sure, I'll be happy to read it. And by the way, I have an idea for a book. Can I get on the phone with you? They said, sure. And so I got on the phone with the editor who runs the whole publishing company, and in that first phone call, I told him my idea, and he loved it. He said, yes, we're buying it, we'll do it. And not until a couple of weeks later, when I started to get emails from different people in the publishing house, did I realize, oh, that's not how it's usually done. So this is one of those books that as soon as I heard the title, I knew it was meant to be, and the process has just unfolded beautifully. I did get sick along the way in the process of writing it, so it took a little bit longer. But I'm better and totally cured now, and the book is look, it's real. It's in my hands. I'm so excited. So it's time to kill the elevator speech.
What an opportunity.
It is, yeah. Super excited.
Very good. And serendipity worked in your favor.
Absolutely, it did.
So Michael Port's talking about it, you're talking about it, but you and I both know that the elevator speech is alive and well in networking circles. In fact, you have some very well-named people out there, well-regarded, that are still encouraging people to use the elevator speech, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from the time I got the idea for this book to now, about 3 or 4 more books teaching people how to do an elevator speech have come on the market. I mean, it's a very popular concept. And the reason it's popular is because, first of all, when people go to networking meetings, a lot of times they're forcing themselves to go because they know this is good for my business. And they've heard, well, you shouldn't go to a networking, right? You shouldn't go to a networking meeting without 2 things. Number 1, don't ever go to a networking meeting without a business card. Number 2, don't ever go to a networking meeting without your elevator speech. You'll just be wasting your time, because if you don't know how to answer the question, what do you do? Well, then how are people going to know what you do? So it's kind of like this old school information that's just out there. And can you go to a networking meeting?
Can I throw something in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's really key here. Yeah. When you're told don't do a networking meeting without a business card and with an elevator speech, what you're essentially being instructed to do is don't go to a networking meeting without a plan to make it all about you.
Yes, exactly.
And that is part of the problem that the elevator speech creates. Is you're not going there to serve. You're not going there to help the other person. So it throws a barrier between you and whoever you're going to network with before you've even shown up.
It's like you already read the book.
We have this psychic telekinetic link or something. We just are entirely on the same page here. Now, you mentioned a little earlier that a client called you and said, hey, can you teach me how to write an elevator speech? And you said, hold your horses.
Right.
You don't want an elevator speech, and let me tell you why. Mm-hmm. So what were the reasons that you gave that client for why it was not a good idea?
It wasn't just one client. It's been probably hundreds. So, and here's what I say. So I actually went back to my academic roots. I did academic research on this thing. And in fact, there's several reasons. One of them is the one that you led with, that like you hate it. Most people hate the elevator speech. Most people don't enjoy when someone else kind of spits their elevator speech at them. They kind of feel like, ugh, a little verbal vomit, you know, like I need a shower now. So people don't like to hear it. And people get nervous when they have to deliver one. Like, oh my gosh, I memorized this thing and I'm scared and I hope I say it the right way. And so number one is people just don't like it. But number two, looking at the research, is research shows that in fact, no matter what you say and how much you say, people are only going to remember 17.2% of what you said. And that was based on a study of folks who are listening specifically for information. They were listening to the news, and they were listening for information on the news. And so these are people who are interested in what's happening. They only could remember about 17% of what was said. So now, if you're going to put together this whole long elevator speech, and they're only going to remember 17% of what you said, that feels like a little bit of a waste of time. Further, what people actually remember around what you say about you is 2 to 4 words, and that's it. They're only going to remember 2 to 4 words. It's, you know what, if you think about it, it's not surprising. So I belong to a weekly networking group that's called a Leads group. And actually, the father of Leads groups, Dr. Ivan Meisner, he actually was one of the folks who endorsed the book, and he's the founder of BNI, Business Networking International.
Ooh,
and he loved the book.
Guy, then.
Yeah, he's fantastic. So, one of the reasons he loved the book is because I talk about, listen, when you go to networking meetings, yes, it's good to meet other people, and it's probably better if you can meet people who you're going to remember and you're going to get to know over a period of time, which is what Leads groups allow you to do. So in my mind's eye, as I go around the table of the people that go to my weekly networking group, I can think in my head of the real estate person, the mortgage guy, the home baker who makes baked goods beautifully, the photographer, the insurance guy. I'm going around the jewelry lady, right? Jewelry lady, 2 words. Real estate broker, 3 words. That's what people are going to remember about you. They're not going to necessarily remember all of those words that you worked so hard to put together in an elevator speech. So now we have a decision to make in that moment. Do you want to be in charge of those 2 to 4 words that people remember about you by just saying, I'm a whatever? Or do you want them to have to figure it out amongst the clever prose that you put together that people say, oh yeah, come up with something really clever. I'm a fixer of messages. Like, what the heck is that? I'm a communication coach. I'm a speech coach. Oh, okay, well that makes sense. I know what that is. That's easy, right? I'm an accountant. People know what an accountant is. So whatever it is that you do, just say, I save money on their taxes. Like, well, okay, so what, how? What do you do? And the how, some people will ask how, and some people will internally roll their eyes and go, well, that's nice, and walk away. Because people who have elevator speeches put together, who deliver that in the moment, like you said, they're not there to engage in a conversation with somebody else. They're there for an alternative purpose. And you don't know what that alternative purpose is, but maybe they're there to get business, or maybe they're there to get leads, or maybe they're there to get some validation for who they are. I don't know, but they're there to get something, and they're not there to give. They're not there to serve, and they're not there to share. And so that's why we want to kill the elevator speech. It doesn't work for you, first of all, and it broadcasts a message that, hey, I'm here and I'm all about me.
Hallelujah. Consider it dead.
Yay!
So, we've established it, right? The elevator speech is old school. It's a bad idea. We are in the era of relationship building. We have relationship media. We've got all the different social media outlets that allow us to engage in ways like never before. So that's where we need to get our mindset. So we've made it very clear. Elevator speech, dead and gone. So what do we do instead?
Okay, so number one, what are the 2 to 4 words that you want people to know you as, right? So figure out what those are. So when somebody says, what do, you can say, I'm a whatever. And it should be something recognizable and something that they'll be able to kind of put in the back of their mind and go, oh, okay, great. I know who this person is and I have an idea about what they might do. The second thing then is you want to be the one to be asking the questions, if at all possible, in that conversation. So you don't want somebody else to come up to you and ask you what you do. You want to, and you've probably heard this before, you want to seek to be more interested than interesting. So
Absolutely.
be interested in the other person by asking that person questions. And I have one question that is probably the easiest question that will start a conversation that will allow the other person to, if in case they happen to have an elevator speech, you get to sidestep hearing that by asking this question. You want me to tell you what it is?
Absolutely.
Of course.
Bring it on.
All right. So it's 5 words. When I do this with my audiences, okay, 5 words, and we start with our fist down. So if you want to play along as you're watching, you can. But it's how did you get started? How did you get started? High five. Whee! So how did you get started? And so just remember those words, and then ask that question any way that feels natural in the moment. And I'll tell you, the people that I've trained this process to over the course of writing this book and sharing this information, they come back to me invariably, and they say, that worked so cool. It was so fun because we got to have a conversation, and I got to hear about how this person, their story, and I got to hear information about them. When you ask somebody
right there, you want to hear their story, not their tagline. The story is what tells you who they are.
Right. Yeah, because when you ask somebody, how did they get started? It's saying, I'm curious to know about you. I want to know more about who you are as a person, and what are your motivations, and what are your interests, and what are you excited about? And all of that is wrapped up in, how did you get started doing what you're doing? So, you and I are at an event, and some people will have a name badge on that, they make their own name badges, and it has like who they are, their title, or their company, or something underneath that. And that's really all you need to look at somebody and go, oh, I see you're an accountant. All right, so tell me, how did you get started doing that? How did you get started in accounting? And somebody who's even an accountant, who are known to be kind of more dry people, right? They'll tell you how they got started. People like you and me, Brian, we love to talk. We love to communicate with each other. That's our thing. Like for us, we're off and running. You ask us a question about ourselves, we're good. So you get somebody like you and me, and they're really excited. You get somebody who's a little more nervous, or a little more introverted, or a little more not sure of what to say about themselves, and you ask them a relational question like that, and they light up, and they smile, and they look, and they think, oh my gosh, let me tell you, when I was in college, or my degree is actually in art. Like, wow, how did an artist get to be an accountant? And now you're having a conversation. And that is what networking is about, is meeting people, having conversations. And here's the thing, the more other people are allowed to talk about themselves, the more favorably they'll remember you.
Especially because you're giving them an opportunity to be seen by you.
Yes, to be seen.
And they know that you are really paying attention.
Yep, be seen, heard, and understood. Because at our human core, you probably could speak to this better than I could, but at our human core, we want to know that other people get us, that they understand us. They don't have to, we know that not everybody's going to agree with us, but we want people to understand us. And that's what we truly want. And when you ask a relational question, that's like saying, I want to understand you. I want to see you, and I want to hear you.
Yeah, you're talking about connection, and that's one of my passions. And you're exactly right. That I really focus a lot on how to help people connect and create those moments. Now, you and I know that old habits die hard, and I imagine that there are still some people that are listening to this, watching this, that say, oh man, but I like my elevator speech. I spent so much time on it. I don't want to trade it in for something else. So what do you think about the people that having a hard time letting go of it? Are there even opportunities where it makes sense to have one just in case?
Okay. I don't call it an elevator speech. I should back up, because as a speech teacher, I would be remiss if I didn't provide my definition of a speech, which is the actual, it's not just my definition. The definition of a speech is from one person to many. One to many. So when you're giving an elevator speech one-to-one, that's just weird, right? That's not a conversation. So there are times where you do need to have some kind of a speech because, like, for example, at a weekly networking meeting, a leads meeting, or maybe it's not a weekly, maybe it's not a regular meeting, but you're at an event and they say everybody's going to go around the table and they're going to introduce themselves to the group. And maybe you're introducing yourself to everybody in the group, or maybe you're just introducing yourselves to the people at that table. And in that moment, yes, you need something to say. But here's the caveat. If you really love your elevator speech, fine. But if you don't have one, don't worry about writing one. Start with who you are. You can start with your name, you can start with what you do, and then say, I have a tip for you. And then share a tip that is something that's useful, something that's valuable, something that people, whoever they happen to be, could potentially take advantage of your tip in that moment or immediately following that meeting in their lives. Something that says, I'm here to give, I'm here to share, and I just want to I want to help you out a little bit. And what that does is it builds your credibility as the expert that you are. It shows that you're willing to share information. It shows that you've got something useful to share. If you've got one tip, you probably have 15 or 20, right? So there's probably more where that one tip came from. So share a tip, and it can be the same tip every time if you want to feel like, okay, I want to practice and I want to make sure I know my tip. But usually you're not the first person. So if you're not the first person, then pay attention to what everybody else is saying. And as they're talking, like, who are they and what are they about? And in that moment, maybe you want to customize your tip to the people who are sitting around the table. And say, I see we've got a lot of people here who are service providers. Well, here's a tip if you're a service provider. And I might give a tip about, putting together a speech. And when you put together a speech, answer your most frequently asked questions that you get as a service provider for people. Oh, wow, okay, great, I can do that. It doesn't take any more time to share a tip than it does to share a marketing message. But if you want to think of it as more information marketing or content marketing, people are more compelled by information and content marketing than they are by that push marketing that's all about you. Because now you've given them something useful that they can kind of bite their teeth into. They're going to remember you and your tip much more than they're going to remember somebody else and their elevator speech that's all about them.
That's beautiful. Now, there's one thing you mentioned earlier I want to make sure that we find out from you. You said that it's important to dodge that question, so what do you do, right? And people in these networking circles that are used to the elevator speech are used to that question. Yeah. So how do you recommend that we sidestep it so we can get into more of those authentic interactions?
So people are going to ask you that question. So this is where you get to be. Recently, we had election time here in the state of Illinois and across the country.
So you get only yesterday.
Well, right. I don't know when we're going to be sharing the podcast. But yes, when we're recording, it was just yesterday. And so you get to be like a politician. Instead of answering the question that they ask, answer the question you wanted them to ask. And you wanted them to ask a relational question. So answer the question very simply with your 2 to 4 words. And then tell them how you got started, or tell them your favorite thing about what you do, or tell them about the project that you're working on right now that you're super excited about, or tell them about a new client that you just picked up and why they decided they wanted to hire you. So share something, again, relational about you. Share some of your story, because when you share your story, it's like saying, hey, I'm a human being and I'm just having a conversation with you. So you don't have to rehearse it. You don't have to say the same thing every time. Just have a conversation. Now, when I ask other people how they got started, sometimes they'll remember that I asked that question and they'll go, well, how did you get started? And then it's kind of fun, and then just talk about your origins. You can go wherever you want to go with when you got started and how you got started. And please don't memorize that speech. Please don't make that sound like this is the same thing that you say over and over again. That's what we're trying to kill. Don't take this, my how did you get started as your instructive to, all right, well, I have to write my how did I get started speech. No, just share from the heart of where you were and what you remember. And maybe each time you tell it, you're going to tell it in a little bit of a different way because you're in a different spot. You're going to be in a different spot tomorrow than you are today. And you're going to be in a different spot in a month from now and in 6 months from now than you are today. So just tell your how did you get started from the moment where you are then. you know, I didn't realize 6 months ago, if you had asked me, I've been doing the same thing for 8 years or 10 years or 15 or 20 or however long you've been doing it. And, you know, every year it changes, or even every week it changes. But right now, this is where I am in my business, and this is what I'm working on, and this is what I'm focused on. This is why I decided to focus on that. And then another thing that you didn't ask about, but I do want to bring up, is in interpersonal relationships, which is what you're doing here, is you're beginning an interpersonal relationship, dyadic communication. It's two people, one person talking to another in a dyad. You want to follow the communication principle of, which I'm not really allowing you to do, but we're not really having conversations, it's an interview, where if you're talking, you let one person talk, and then the other person should talk about the same amount of time. And you exchange roles that way, where one is the listener and the other is the speaker in that moment, sender and receiver, whatever language you want to use. I won't test you later on communication language. But you want to make sure that the other person has the equal amount of time to share that you have. So that's one of, can you tell I'm a speaker? I love to talk and I love to teach. That's my thing. That's who I am. So I always have to remind myself, Felicia, stop talking, because I am interested in the other person. But when they ask me something about my stuff, I get excited.
What do we have in common?
So we have to remind ourselves, like, let the other person talk. So that's why I ask them questions first, more as a reminder to myself, like, I am interested in other people, and I do love to hear other people's stories, and I love to engage with them. So I try to ask the questions first, then they have a chance to go and have their conversation, and then I get my chance. So, and then we kind of go back and forth, and if they want to interject because I say something that they're excited about, and, oh, tell me more about that, or whatever. Brian, I'm sure when you tell people you're a speaker, they ask you all kinds of questions, or their eyes light up and they go, oh my gosh, how did you start that? Or how did you get involved? Or where do you speak? Or what groups do you speak? Where do you speak about? Like, that's one of the things that folks get excited about for when I tell them that I'm a speaker. So anyway.
I love talking about presenting. It's really what lights me up the most.
Cool.
So if someone does get it out of their mouth first, if they come up to you and say, so what do you do? Mm-hmm. You would just redirect them by saying, well, first let me tell you how I got started.
No. So you answer the question. It's only 2 to 4 words. Mm-hmm. I'm a speech trainer.
I'm a business relationship coach.
Boom. And then,
That's
and how I got started doing that was, or, I'm a business relationship coach. And, as I'm thinking about it, one of my favorite things that I love to do, just this week I did a podcast interview, and it was so fun to be able to have a conversation with somebody, blah, 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 blah. And you just start to talk. If you're doing a podcast, if you're doing interviews, if you're meeting other people. Yes.
So one more thing I want to do before we finish up here, because we could talk for hours, I have no doubt.
I'm sure.
We've been talking a lot of context here. We've been talking about the context of business and networking meetings. Mm-hmm. But clearly this is something that generalizes, doesn't it? You can use this in a lot of different relationship situations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a few pieces that you can use in different relationship situations. So if you're thinking in terms of larger relationships, a couple of lessons. One is be relational. So ask relational kinds of questions. Ask people what they like, what they enjoy, what their favorite things are, what their memories are. Ask people for their stories. That's about being relational. And then find a way to be interested and care about it. Don't just smile and nod politely and wait for your turn to talk. Really listen and actively engage with that person. So that's kind of the overall lesson here about, and that will help you build every relationship. Think about, how many families, the people talk about the family dinner being dead. My house, where my children are still relatively young, they're 9 and 12, and they've just started getting involved in lots of after-school activities and sports and things. But we have dinner as a family every single night, and part of what we do every single night that I now have seen my children start to do when we're out with other people and other families that I love is we each take turns and we say, so how was your day, Miranda? And Miranda gets to talk about her day, and then she knows that when her sister is talking about her day, how was your day, Grace? Then it's her turn to be invited to listen, and we engage and we ask questions, and then they know that they should ask Mommy, how was your day? And I've seen them now when we're with family or with relatives or where we have people over for dinner, or when we go to someone else's house for dinner, they ask other people those questions. So how was your day? Imagine if all we did in all of our personal relationships, and we said, how was your day to people? And asked a relational question like that. Or what was your favorite thing that happened today?
Oh, you just took the words right out of my mouth.
Right?
I was gonna say that I do things like that too. Or I'll ask, so, was there something really fun that happened so far today?
Yeah. That's a
I
great
ask them about a
question.
specific experience, because then not only are they remembering the facts, but the feeling comes back to them.
Yes.
And they're having that feeling in the moment with you. They're remembering something fun that occurred, something that made them happy, and that adds more positivity and increases the connection between you.
Mm-hmm. And whether it's somebody you've just met, or it's somebody who you have a long-term relationship with, even somebody you're married to, right? You're not talking about, did you pick this up at the store, and what time do we have to get the kids here and there? Like, what was your, all right, did something fun happen today? What's going on? Tell me the best thing that happened for you all day. Like, oh, what happened to me that was fun? And they'll continue to remember you in a positive light, as opposed to, oh, she's nagging me again about the picking up some milk. I remember, So it doesn't matter where you are in a relationship with somebody, whether it's long-term or just meeting them. When you ask them something that brings up a positive memory, which is why I like to ask the how you got started question at business meetings, because it brings up a positive, and we usually start doing something because we're excited about it, and that brings up a happy memory, and that happy memory brings up that emotion, and they're going to remember you in that moment of that happy emotion. And that's only a good thing for you in networking and continuing a relationship.
And it's all because you decided to see them instead of making it all about you.
Yes, exactly.
Now, Felicia, I want everybody who's watching this or listening to this to get this book.
Me too.
Because there's no doubt it's a shift in the paradigm. It's a shift in how we are taught to engage that situation.
Yeah.
And this is something the world desperately needs. So tell all of us, where can people go in this wonderful world of cyberspace, not only to get this book, but also to find out more about what you do?
Okay, so you can go to killtheelevators.com, and there are two E's right next to each other, the and elevator, the ends in an E, and elevator starts with an E. So killtheelevators.com, and you can get some information about the book. You can get, I think I've got the first chapter of the book up there. It'll be available on Amazon at the end of November, so you can buy it on Amazon there. I think they're actually doing pre-order, so if you want to pre-order it, you certainly can do that. So on the first day that's available, it'll ship right out to you. But my publisher just sent me these, so I know that they're in print, and I know they're hardcover, and they're ready to go. And look, there's words inside and everything. It's very exciting. So that's where they can go, killtheelevatorspeech.com, and they'll get some information there and learn a little bit more there and opt in to get some free stuff. And if they want to learn even more about me, I've got a blog at FeliciaSlattery.com. Go to check out my blog, and feel free to comment on anything I talk about, communication and success and speaking and all kinds of cool stuff.
Fantastic. Felicia, thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending this time. This has been really exciting.
Thank you so much.
Everybody else that's watching or listening, please share this episode with anyone you feel would benefit from it. And since it's about connecting with other people, that's pretty much everybody. And don't forget to visit my website, which is brianrkingintl.com. Send me an email. Let me know how this episode has been helpful to you. And feel free to ask me a question as well. But most importantly, be sure and join us for the next episode. Until then, this is Brian King saying, thanks for being you.